If you were given a choice between a bar of gold and a broken pot, which one would you take? Most people wouldn't even hesitate. Gold is wealth, success, and security. But what if I told you that this decision could determine your future in ways you never imagined? High in the misty mountains of Tibet, where time seemed to stand still, an ancient monastery overlooked the valley below. The morning air carried the scent of incense as a group of disciples gathered in the stone courtyard, their breath visible in the crisp cold. Their master, the wise and revered Master Li, stood before them, his gaze steady, his presence commanding yet calm. At his feet, placed on a simple cloth, were two objects, a bar of gold, shining brilliantly in the soft morning light, and a cracked, worn-out ceramic pot. Master Li let the silence linger before speaking, his voice as steady as the mountains themselves. Today, you will each make a choice. Before you lie two objects, only one holds true value. Choose carefully, for this decision may shape the path ahead of you. The disciples exchanged uncertain glances. Some frowned, trying to decipher the meaning behind the test. Others smirked, convinced there was nothing to think about. Wei Long, a young man known for his ambition, stepped forward immediately, his eyes locked on the gold. Without hesitation, he reached for it, his confidence unshaken. This is obvious, Master. Gold has always been the most valuable thing in the world. Beside him, Shen, a quiet and introspective disciple, stood still. His gaze drifted between the two objects, sensing something deeper at play. There was a lesson here, one he wasn't ready to overlook. Master Li smiled, his expression unreadable. Be careful of quick decisions. They often hide what truly matters. The wind whistled through the temple corridors, as if the mountain itself was waiting for their answer. The decision these disciples are about to make will change everything. And in the end, you might find yourself questioning your own choices in life. Stick around, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the wisdom in this story might be exactly what you've been searching for. The silence in the courtyard grew heavy, as if the weight of the decision pressed down on the disciples. Some shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another for reassurance. Wei Long, however, stood tall, his fingers tightening around the golden bar he had chosen. He smirked, confident in his decision. I don't understand why anyone would hesitate, he scoffed. Gold is power, stability, and success. It holds real value. Master Li nodded slowly, studying him with a calm expression. And what about you, Shen? Shen hesitated, his gaze fixed on the broken pot. There was something unsettling about it, something incomplete, yet oddly familiar. He could feel a lesson buried beneath its imperfections, but he couldn't quite grasp it yet. I choose the pot, Master. A murmur rippled through the group. Some disciples exchanged skeptical looks, while others chuckled under their breath. A broken pot, one whispered. What use is that? Master Li gave no reaction. Instead, he gestured for both Wei Long and Shen to step forward. The two disciples approached hesitantly, standing before their teacher. Wei Long, you hold something the world perceives as valuable. Shen, you hold something the world perceives as worthless. But what if the world is mistaken? Wei Long frowned, gripping the gold tighter. Master, gold has value. That is undeniable. This is not a trick, it's just reality. Master Li let out a soft chuckle, then reached for a small wooden hammer resting on a nearby ledge. Without warning, he struck the golden bar. A sharp crack echoed through the courtyard, and in an instant, the illusion shattered. The outer layer of gold peeled away, revealing a dull, worthless block of lead beneath it. Gasps filled the air. Wei Long's face twisted in shock and disbelief. This isn't real gold, he muttered. Master Li turned to the other disciples. Not everything that shines is gold, and not everything that is broken is useless. Remember this lesson well. He then looked toward Shen, his eyes filled with quiet approval. And now, let us see what lies within the broken pot. Shen knelt, carefully lifting the fragile, fractured object. He turned it over in his hands, feeling its rough edges. Then, something unexpected happened. He noticed a faint gleam inside the pot. His heart pounded as he reached in, his fingers brushing against something smooth and delicate. Slowly, he pulled out a small scroll, wrapped in ancient silk. The fabric was faded, but the golden embroidery still shimmered under the morning sun. Gasps echoed through the courtyard once again. "What is that?" a disciple asked. Masterly smiled. "Perhaps now we shall learn the true value of what was hidden in plain sight." The courtyard fell into absolute silence as all eyes locked onto Shen, waiting to see what truth he had unknowingly uncovered. A heavy silence hung over the courtyard as all eyes fixed on the ancient scroll in Shen's hands. The delicate silk wrapping felt fragile, as if it might crumble with the slightest touch. His heart pounded. What wisdom had been sealed inside this broken pot? What could possibly be worth more than gold? Masterly stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Open it, Shen." With great care, Shen untied the silk thread binding the scroll. As he slowly unraveled the parchment, intricate calligraphy, written in deep black ink, emerged. The words were ancient, their strokes elegant yet commanding. He squinted, trying to decipher them. "What does it say?" one of the disciples whispered. Masterly took the scroll from Shen's hands and held it up for all to see. His voice, calm and steady, echoed across the courtyard. "The greatest treasure is not what the hands can hold, but what the mind can understand." Murmurs spread through the disciples. Some looked puzzled, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Wei Long scoffed, his frustration boiling over. "This is nonsense. I chose something real, something valuable. What good is an old piece of paper compared to gold?" Masterly turned his gaze toward him, his expression still composed. "Tell me, Wei Long, what value does your gold have now?" Wei Long looked down at the dull block of lead in his hands. The false gold had deceived him. His grip tightened, his knuckles turning white. That's different. I was tricked." Masterly shook his head. "Were you? Or did you trick yourself?" The young man fell silent. The master then turned to the rest of the disciples. "You see, all of you have been taught to seek what is shiny, what is admired by others. But true wisdom is rarely found in what the world values most. This scroll holds teachings that have guided generations of monks, yet it was hidden inside something broken. Why?" He let the question linger before answering it himself. "Because wisdom is often overlooked. People chase wealth, status, and power, but they ignore the lessons that can truly shape their lives. They discard what looks imperfect, never realizing that within it may lie the greatest treasure of all." Shen looked down at the cracked pot in his hands, his fingers tracing its jagged edges. Then this pot wasn't worthless after all. Masterly smiled. "Exactly. Just as people are not worthless simply because they are broken. Some of the greatest minds, the kindest hearts, and the strongest spirits have been shaped by hardship, by cracks in their journey. They carry wisdom because they have been tested, and that is why I asked you all to choose." The disciples remained silent, each processing the weight of their master's words. Even Wei Long, though still fuming, seemed unsettled by the realization. Masterly took a deep breath, the cold mountain air filling his lungs. He gestured toward the scroll. "This is a lesson that will take years to fully understand. But for now, ask yourselves this. When you look at your own life, are you chasing gold, or are you searching for wisdom?" He turned his gaze toward the audience, his eyes piercing through the screen. "And what about you? Which one have you been chasing?" The air in the courtyard was thick with contemplation. The weight of Master Li's words settled into the minds of the disciples, like stones dropped into a still pond, sending ripples of realization through their thoughts. Wei Long, however, clenched his fists. His pride burned hotter than the morning sun. "This is just philosophy," he muttered, his voice laced with frustration. "Gold is still gold. The world doesn't run on wisdom. It runs on wealth and power." Masterly studied him for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he spoke, his voice as soft as the wind but as firm as the mountain beneath their feet. "If gold could bring you peace, why do the richest still crave more? If power could bring you happiness, why do rulers live in fear of losing it? Tell me, Wei Long, what is it that you truly seek?" Wei Long faltered, his lips parting slightly, but he had no answer. The other disciples remained silent, waiting to see how their arrogant peer would respond. But instead of speaking, Wei Long turned his gaze to Shen, who still held the broken pot. His grip tightened. "This isn't fair," he snapped. "You knew the gold was fake. You set me up." Master Li let out a slow breath, his disappointment evident. "No, Wei Long. I did not deceive you. You deceived yourself. You assumed the gold was real because it looked valuable, and you dismissed the pot because it looked broken, but the truth was always in front of you." The young man swallowed hard, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. His pride was crumbling, but he wasn't ready to admit defeat. Master Li took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "You still have a choice. You can hold on to your anger and leave this place unchanged, or you can open your mind and learn." The wind whispered through the courtyard, as if the mountain itself awaited his answer. Wei Long's jaw tensed. His hands trembled slightly, and then, without another word, he turned away. He walked toward the temple gates, his shoulders stiff, his footsteps heavy. He didn't look back. A long silence followed his departure. The other disciples exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of what to say. Shen, however, remained still. His fingers gently traced the edges of the cracked pot. Master Li placed a hand on his shoulder. "And what about you, Shen? What have you learned?" The young disciple took a deep breath, then met his master's gaze. "That true value isn't in what we see. It's in what we understand." A small smile touched the corners of Master Li's lips. "Then you are ready to take your next step." The morning sun broke through the mist, casting a golden glow over the temple. And for the first time, Shen felt that he was finally seeing the world clearly. The golden glow of the rising sun bathed the monastery in warm light, casting long shadows across the courtyard. The disciples remained silent, still absorbing the weight of what had just transpired. Wei Long had left, choosing pride over wisdom. His footsteps had long faded, but his absence still lingered like an unspoken lesson. Shen, however, stood firm. He had chosen the broken pot, not fully understanding why at the time, but now he saw the truth. The cracks in the pot, the imperfections, the overlooked wisdom, it all mirrored life itself. Master Li turned to face his disciples, his gaze steady yet kind. "Each of you will face moments like this in your life. Times when the world offers you something that looks valuable, while wisdom hides in places you least expect. The question is, will you have the eyes to see it?" Some disciples nodded in quiet reflection, while others looked down, lost in thought. Shen stepped forward, still holding the pot. "Master, what will happen to Wei Long?" Master Li exhaled slowly, gazing out toward the mountain path. "He has chosen his path. Perhaps one day, life itself will teach him the lesson he refused to learn today." He turned back to Shen, his expression thoughtful. "And what about you? What will you do with what you've learned?" Shen met his master's gaze, his grip tightening on the pot. "I will carry this wisdom with me, and I will share it with those who are willing to listen." A smile touched the corners of Master Li's lips. "Then you are truly ready." As the sun continued to rise, the disciples followed their master back into the temple. The choice had been made, and though Wei Long had walked away from wisdom, the lesson he had left behind would remain, echoing through the monastery for generations to come. Because, in the end, not everything that shines is gold, and not everything that is broken is worthless. Master Li's words still echo in the air, but now, the lesson is no longer just for the disciples in that ancient monastery. It's for you. What are you chasing in your life? Are you reaching for the gold, the symbols of success, wealth, or validation, while overlooking the quiet wisdom hidden in the broken pot? Sometimes, the things we dismiss, the struggles, the imperfections, the lessons wrapped in hardship, are the very things that shape us into who we're meant to become. The cracks in our lives, much like the broken pot, often hold the water that nourishes our growth. So now, I ask you, would you have chosen the gold or the broken pot? Leave your answer in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because the choice you make reveals more about your values than you might realize. If this story made you pause and reflect, consider subscribing to the channel and activating the bell. That way, you'll be the first to know when we release stories like this, ones that challenge your perspective and inspire growth. And if you believe others could benefit from this lesson, leave a like. It's a small gesture, but it helps the story reach someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time, stay mindful of the choices you make. And remember, true value isn't always found in what shines brightest, but in what sustains us through the seasons of life.